ask each of us, how are you first? Just how are you? See if we can notice what's arising in the foreground, maybe an excitement, maybe some thoughts about things that are happening in our lives. What are the loudest expressions that are here for you? And then what's it arising in? Maybe there's a connectedness that's already, maybe there's a sense of connectedness here. Maybe it's peace. What's the background? What's here for each of us? And then this background, what's it like to feel that? To feel this quality of beingness? What is it for you? What's the loudest, most prominent quality of beingness that's here now? Peace, love, okayness, connectedness, calm, flow, joy, stillness. Like just to let ourselves fall into that. And then from here, we're also aware of whatever's arising, the thoughts that are coming, the sensations, the images. Are we able to be with what David was sharing, the sense of doing nothing? There's just awareness of what's here. Notice the sense of doing nothing. And then what parts are wanting to do something? Then we just become we're aware of those ones. Oh no, but there's this that needs to be done. I need to think about this. I need to understand what David was saying. And then we're just aware. There's awareness of precious expressions of you. And this is where it can become really fun. Our friend Eli um, came up with a way of doing this that I really like. He calls it like the recliner chair. And there's a sense of like, oh, recliners going up and going forward. Oh, we're going forward into that foreground, into those parts, or a sense of going back into self. So right now, for each of us, as we're perhaps aware of the background, the beingness, and the foreground, where are we in that forward and backwards of the recliner? How far forward are we? How much are we kind of feeling in touch with, connected with the parts, or how much are we back in this place of just this resting awareness? And this awareness, there's awareness of the parts that are out here. And can you push the button? You might hate this, but it's like, wait, Sid, this is really peaceful here. Why are you asking me to do this? We push the button that would kind of like push us forward in the recliner. And so we get closer to the parts. We feel them more. Closer to the parts, we feel them more. Do you notice the sensations increase? The thoughts get louder. And then if we go the other way with the button and it goes back on the recliner, something just kind of falls back or sinks in to this self, to beingness. And we get more distant. The parts become more distant, become quieter. This is Does that work in your system, the recliner image, or is yours a different image? Does it work differently in you? How does it work? The back and forth to closer to the parts and then abiding more as beingness. Some practices like Advaita Vedanta, it's just they use the mind for this through inquiry. And through inquiry, it just kind of helps us step back to self. How does it work in you? What's your best way of this? And then as we're resting here, let's get a glimpse of something else. My friend Mary, she spent a lot of time with this teacher we both enjoy in the US named Angelo. And there they speak of everything being of self. And it's almost as if the forward and back doesn't work so much anymore. It can just be everything is an expression of this. See if we can taste that as we're aware of our parts. Could everything be an expression of whatever this is for you? Some people call it life, beingness, self, energy, kundalini, shakti. Everything is an expression of this. Let's just do one more shift here. I'm going to invite us all from here just to sink back into the beingness, into the self. And maybe it's a recliner, however you do that. And then from here, can we notice that self is welcoming? It's a yes, it's openness. Can you find that? What qualities of that do you find here? In this sense of just this expansive openness, spaciousness, tenderness, welcoming, celebration. What's your word? Or is it presence? Doesn't need to be a big word. It could be presence, tenderness, care. As we find that, and this is where we go to this view or path that we call the Rumi's guest house. And here you are the host. This being human is like a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness. Welcome and entertain them all. From here, can we just be a space of welcoming for our parts? To be welcomed. And from here, can each of us notice at least two or three parts from here? Can we be aware of them? And maybe they're way away. Maybe they're like a mile away, or maybe they're just yelling in our ear. See if we can be aware of at least more than one, at least two parts of this Rumi's guest house. Can they be our guests? And in honor of my friend Jack, who's been speaking of the basement of the guest house, do you know that you have a basement in your guest house? Did you know that? That Rumi's guest house has a basement? And if it's there, it's welcome too, right? Because everything is welcomed here in the basement. We don't get close to the basement. We can just see it from afar, maybe very far. We see that there's a basement. But can we find that the same welcoming that goes on the surface also includes those aspects of us that we're not gonna get close to, but they're aspects of us that aren't yet ready to come up to the surface. Ones that might be wounded, might be carrying weight, charge, trauma, hidden in the shadows. And there's just a sense of welcoming them all, that they can be here too. What's that like for you? And if it gets uncomfortable, just zoom out or change the attention to the surface level. We're not going to get close to this basement, but just to be aware that the basement is here and that it can be welcomed as well. It's just keep track of if you have parts that go, this is too much, and just to honor these parts. This is all gentle. All right. And then as we come back together, can the space stay open? Can we all stay open to all of this, that's arising in us, this precious life that's arising in us? And you think it just becomes richer because you have 8 friends with you here. And the self, the collective self, this beingness that welcomes your parts. Can they feel it? Can your parts feel this, that they're not alone? That there are 8 of us with you in this connectedness and this love? And that your parts aren't just, the Rumi's guest house just became so much more full of loving, of Shakti, of care, of Shiva, of beingness. And so as you're experiencing that, just for the next minute, I will do my little housekeeping. But just as you stay with your parts and welcoming them from the space, and just as you all know, I'm a mediator, I'm not a psychotherapist. And so this isn't the EIFS of psychotherapy. And we have Rossi here for an hour, she notes, so we need to have the best of our time with Rossi today, everybody. And so I'm not a psychotherapist. The IFS of So as friends and colleagues coming together, if everybody's good, being responsible for their own journeys, if I could get a thumbs up, please. And secondly, as always, I'm recording this, but only my image would ever be shared. However, the audio that you share could be. And so if ever there's any uncomfortable, just let me know and I'll make you a co-host and you can click pause whenever you're sharing something like that. Or at the end, if you recognize you shared something that you're uncomfortable with, just let me know and I'll go delete, delete, delete if you let me know at the end. If everybody's good, this might be shared. If I get a thumbs up, please. All right. And so here we are. How are we? How are you? How are you? How are you? And maybe let's go around and hear what's going on. And one theme that seems helpful is to hear, if you'd like to, like what are your two loudest parts? And what's the most prominent quality of beingness of self in your system? We could go there if that comes for you, or just whatever aha, difficulty, whatever's going on. Who wants to go first?
Um, so the two most prominent parts, there's sadness that just feels like raw and like authentic, and there's another part that's like the opposition to that, and there's kind of some sort of beliefs there about like it's bad to be sad or that makes other people uncomfortable or it's not acceptable. Um, and then the quality of self is just sitting back from both of those and just letting those two exist, coexist, play out, and just be there.
And this be there of self that's just sitting back and aware of the others playing out. What's the flavor of that? Would you say it's presence, it's awareness, it's welcoming, it's okayness, it's peace, it's love? What's your primary flavor, Eli?
Right now, it's do nothing. It's like not. It's a complete like just allowing of those things to be without trying to do anything at all.
So this allowing. So for all of us, as we hear Eli and we dive in with him with what he's describing, there's just an allowing of what's happening. What's the feel for each of us of this allowing? You know, the Buddhists sometimes just use one word for this self. Sometimes they'll use equanimity in the sense of allowing. Does it feel like for you, does it feel like welcoming, or is it more neutral than that? Is it any less? It's just more a presence, a being, an awareness. Or is it maybe more, have a more activeness, like a tenderness and care, a connectedness, a connecting? What's the flavor of this allowing for each of us? What's your flavor? And Eli, give us what would be the next word that would come to you with this allowing for the descriptive?
No problem to solve or hands off.
I love this one. That's one that Eli had this facilitator we enjoy named Locke Kelly. And he says, what's here when there's no problem to be solved? Maybe that for all of us. What's here when there's no problem to be solved? And maybe that is just a window to beingness when there's no problem to solve. Oh, here I am. Here is this okayness, this welcoming. And then Eli, for all of us, as we hear about Eli's sadness part, there's a raw, authentic sadness that's there. As we hear that in Eli's system, what responds in you? What's the response? Do you find a welcoming, an accepting, a care, a connectedness with it, a compassion? What arises? Like this from this beingness, you might notice that effortlessly. And then what parts come up when we hear sadness? There's one that's like, oh, I've got one just like that. Or sadness, oh, I'm sorry. Eli's feeling sadness. What parts respond in you when you hear sadness in Eli? And what sense of self? We all find that. And then in Eli, he had a part that responded to the sadness, that in opposition to the sadness, no, the sadness is making others uncomfortable. The sadness is bad. The sadness is unacceptable. When you hear that part in Eli, how does your system respond? Is there compassion and love for that part? Can we all see, is there a sense of welcoming the innocence of that part? It's like, you're bad. No, you're bad. You shouldn't be sad. Sadness is going to make other people uncomfortable. It's wrong. As we hear that part, can we welcome that? As if our our guest house doesn't have walls between us. These walls between our squares are gone. It's just one big guest house. Can we welcome that part in Eli that says, this is bad. Sadness is bad. It makes other people uncomfortable. It's unacceptable. Can you welcome that? And let's say it's even louder, like in the guest house, like wow, we can really hear this, wow. It's like, this is bad. It's making people uncomfortable. It's unacceptable. Can we see the innocence of it even when it's loud? How are you doing with that in welcoming this part in Eli? And then lastly, can you find your version of that? What's your version of that part that says, no, it's not okay. It's bad. It's going to make people uncomfortable. It's unacceptable, especially if it's loud inside of you. Can that be welcome? Can we see the innocence of it? Just like we can in Eli's system. Can we see it in ours? And then my last question for all of us, and specifically for Eli, is what's it like for your parts, in Eli, for these two parts? What's it like in all of us, for especially the one that says it's unacceptable to be welcomed, to be seen as innocent? Can that part feel the sense of welcoming? Can it feel it? Does something change? What happens somatically when something that's tight maybe it starts to loosen up with this welcoming? What happens? Eli, what's it like in your system?
There's another part that comes in, I guess in this case like a helper part, and it's sort of anger, and it's like how criminal that they didn't like even let you, like you weren't allowed, like that you weren't allowed to be a certain way. Like you could be whatever you want. Like you could be sad. That's fine. It's not a problem. So it feels like it's coming to oppose that opposition part and then give more
Yes.
space.
Yes. So how about that one for all of us when we hear this part that has anger? What do you mean telling me that an aspect of me isn't okay, that sadness isn't okay? It's not okay for us to express what's authentically here. Are you out of your mind? An anger part like that, as we hear this in Eli, how do we respond to it? Maybe does it scare you a little bit? Does a part come up that's scared? It's scared when it hears anger. What happens when we hear that anger? Some might call it like a righteous anger. Can't you? What do you mean you're shutting down my innocence, my expression? As we
Hmm.
hear that, can you feel the welcoming? Can you see the innocence of that, the beauty of that part? Like, are you crazy?
Yeah.
This is me.
Hmm.
What's it like? What's it for all of us? And then I got the question. Sorry, I lied. I got another question for you, Eli. But for all of us, what's it like to hear that in our systems and to see the innocence and to welcome anger? And Eli, what's it like in your system when this righteous anger comes and it's just like it's welcomed?
It feels like the anger is protecting me from that other part that's not mine. It's like other people's beliefs, it's other people's ideas about what's okay and not. And so it feels like it pushes that one out because it's not mine and allows the sadness to just be.
Pause. So when we hear that from Eli, do we have even more love and appreciation for this anger, for the role it plays? It's kind of separate. Hey, those aren't my beliefs; those are others, and we get to separate with the anger to allow this what is here to be. Do we have more love for Eli's anger right now? More welcoming, more appreciation. Wow, that's really a superhero. And this is where it's going to get a little scary. Again, what's your version of this? What's your version of that anger that says no? It just says no. This isn't mine. This is you all. This is culture. These are legacy burdens. Not interested. When that in you stands up and says that, what happens in your system? The parts get scared. We're going to get in trouble. We're separating from people. We shouldn't do this. The parts come up that get scared. And if so, can all of these be welcomed? And this, if it gets uncomfortable, just zoom out some. If it gets starts getting uncomfortable with some of these parts that come up, just zoom out, or just, or to be clear, like enough of that. I'm just going to step back into self. I'm just going to do that little armchair thing and lean back. We get to take care of ourselves here. Any final thoughts, Eli?
It's a superhero, that third one, that third guy, and it opens the door. It like pushes the other stuff out of the way.
Beautiful. It's like I feel like so in my mind. It's like what's the Superman song? How does that one go? You know that one? Some of us grew up on it. It's like it's a bird, it's a plane, it's Superman. I can't get the tone, but it's like for that heroic part, or it's for that heroic part. It needs. I wish I had a little button that I could push and we could have the soundtrack for the hero part. Uh, thank you, Eli. So before we go on from here, like I'm curious, is there anything bubbling for anybody in response to how that might have touched your system, what Eli shared? Let me hear from two people, maybe just a little snippet. Yes, Susan.
Only that a interesting part came up around pushing the burdens that don't belong. There was a part that wants to honor my ancestral burdens in a sense, like my ancestors. So there was a part that came up on top, which was about honoring it all, actually. Even the stuff that I've been given that wasn't mine or that's ancestral, or there's something about being so interconnected with all of that as well, in a sense. That's kind of where I went with that.
That's a lot, right? For all of us as we hear what Susan just shared. But I want to suggest, I want to sell, but I want to celebrate Eli's anger part. Like in a way, I wish I had one that clear in my system. And I'm guessing others feel the same way when they hear that superhero, that clarity. And what Susan's pointing to, I think eventually that comes at some point when there's just when there's just space for all the parts, and we've gotten that clarity, we've taken it back, we've taken the space back, and then it's like, okay, now I can have compassion for that one that says, no, you have to be this way. As I grew up in the South. As a man, you have to be this way. All those ancestral things, they can then be welcomed, and we can have compassion and love for them. And I love what Susan shared. How can we hear from at least one more person with what Eli shared or Susan? Anything else bubbling? Yeah, vendor.
Um, for me, there was a lot of somatic stuff coming up. My body was feeling really cold, a bit of a headache, and nausea. And it was more of a frustration coming up for me. And there was a part saying,
And what do you, oh, please go on.
there was a part coming up saying, it was uncomfortable. The sensation was uncomfortable. And I wanted to do EFT because this nausea, I just want to release it. That's
Beautiful. Let's check and see about with everyone with this, with what vendors sharing as we were diving with Eli, or perhaps just whatever's happening in your system as we come together today. There was some discomfort, especially, or it might have been when we went with the little guided meditation, because we were talking about Jack's basement, right? We were talking about this basement to the Rumi's guest house, and that really is for some of us. I think it's like the scariest place. Some people even call it the heart of darkness. This basement, but it's really, but it's kind of funny. It's like it's a hard dot, but then when you get closer to it, eventually it becomes the heart of love, right? But it's like, but it's scary. It's scary. And so as we hear what Vinder shared, could you relate? Was there some discomfort in you, some parts that were like, I mean, I love how her system is so somatic. For a couple groups, she's spoken of the sense of nausea coming up, the sense of being nauseous and a headache. Like it really goes into the body, the somatic experience of our parts, of the discomfort. How does it show up in each of you? Like, because this is a headache and nausea. What do you find? Is it anxiety? Is it tightness? Does the breathing change? And maybe even for some, it's panic, right? It gets scary, and we have parts that panic. I can't breathe. I need space. And this is it's just our precious parts as we somatically experience in them. And she was having the emotions of frustration. There's frustration here. What's your what when it became, if there's anything uncomfortable during the guided meditation, or where Eli took us, or where Susan took us, which was, there's the basement is scary, and then Susan took us maybe to this next scariest place, all the ancestral burdens. Let's like welcome them all. But was there discomfort? Did any parts get hooked a little bit, and then have like this nausea, this headache, this frustration? What else you got for us, Vinder?
I don't know if it's ancestral or a woman's role that I am responsible for others' discomfort, or they're going through issues, then I need to fix it for them, yet they're not ready to do the work. And I feel anxious that they can't get better. It could be coming from
Yeah.
childhood.
So how about that? I'm responsible for others' discomfort. Like, first, when we hear Vinder describe this, as we're in this big guest house together, pretending that they're not lines between our boxes, and Vinder describes this part that feels responsible for other people's discomfort. What's your response to it? Does a critic pop up? It's like, oh no, you shouldn't have that part, or that's not that's it. That part causes a lot of trouble, or do you have a part that shows up in response? And then can you find the self that responds, the beingness? This Rumi's guest house is welcoming and entertaining them all as we welcome this part that feels like it's responsible for others' discomfort. Can we see the innocence of it? We see the innocence of it. And just for all of us, and this might get a little scary, there's this, what seems to be, I'm calling it a truism in IFS, but find out for yourself, the intensity of our protectors match the degree of pain of their associated exiles. So as we hear that, just the idea that if we can see our parts in pairs, if your system is ready for this, like when you have a protector, if you can also almost simultaneously noticing what it's protecting, but stay away, right? Keep a distance, just like we keep a distance from the basement. But like as we listen to Vinder describe this part that feels responsible for other people's discomfort, if it did not help, if you find that part, you could find your part. It's often a connector part that feel that like a part that's connecting, that can take the sense of responsibility for other people's discomfort. And you might be late, but there are exceptions. If it's my wife, if it's my kid, if it's my parent, but maybe they're not exceptions. If for this part in all of us, for new Vinder in all of us that takes responsibility, if it didn't do its job, what would be triggered in you? What would be triggered in you? That would be like the exile. And can we be aware of both of those from a distance? What's that like, Vinder? Can we be aware of this one that feels like it needs to fix? That it needs to fix, it's responsible. Can we also be aware of that it's protecting something? It's protecting a beautiful vulnerability in our system. What comes for you?
Sadness.
Yeah. But let me pause for a minute. This is where it becomes really tricky because it's really easy to blend with that vulnerability with the exile. And this is the trick, to stay aware of both of these at the same time. That'll keep it from blending. And that is a way to, it's a way to like speed up this whole journey if our system can do that. If it can be aware of the exile as it's aware of the protector, but from a distance. So do you find a part, what would the name for the part be that it's kind of protecting, Vendor? What would you call that part?
Just feel like I need to rescue something. I need to rescue someone.
And when you rescue them, if you didn't rescue them, what would you feel? Would there be a sense of shame that would be touched? A sense of what would happen inside of you? You would be uncomfortable. You would be sad. What's the part that would be touched?
Worthlessness.
Worthlessness. Perfect. And let's not go any further than that. That's huge. We're just aware of there's a worthlessness here and there's a protector. And you know what? I bet you every single one of us can find a theme, a worthless part in our system. We can find a flavor of that. We all know this. We don't want to get close to it because that can re-trigger our system. We just want to be aware of it. We're aware of we're aware of the protector and what it's protecting. Can everybody find their version of this? And yours might go somewhere different. The sense of, wow, I'm responsible for others people's discomfort. I need to fix it. What's it protecting? Vendors mentioning worthlessness. Same thing here. I would use the same word in my system, this worthlessness. Same word. And just for all of us, gosh, I'm going to really push the edge today, and we could pass, but let's just go around real fast and maybe give one word for what that part might be protecting in your system, because I kind of don't want to leave Vendor out here on all on our own, kind of being the trailblazer for all of us in this place. Can I just go around real quick? David, what would your word be? Oops, we're muted.
Disrespectable, not worthy of respect.
Thank you. Jack.
Sort of an amoral evil.
Say that again, please.
It's 2 words, amoral evil.
Thank you. Immoral and evil. What are we protecting? Susan.
Mine would be worthless too.
Worthless. Thank you. Eli.
Discomfort.
Thank you. Mary.
Probably not good enough or lacking. One of those two, kind of the same thing.
Beautiful. Thank you. Rossi.
I will pass and I will explain in my share.
Yes. Okay. I want to pause here. Like, this is what can the pass, right? Isn't this just perfect? Because if we can feel any discomfort going into this is the system naturally opens, or there's a wisdom here. And just I'm going to pass on this, and we'll see what Rossi's story is, what it's really there for with this. But I just want to say can we all find that in us that might be like, oh, I could pass or I could go here. Thank you, Rossi. Sarah, what's your word?
It would be also worthiness and not enoughness.
Not enoughness. Thank you. Vendor, how's this going? Is it helpful? Like the sense that this is just such a universal human experience. This it's being protected. Final thoughts on kind of what you're sharing with us? What's going on with you?
I'm normal.
Is that perfect? Thank you. Let's see if we can right there. I'm normal, and we might be like, oh, that's just funny, or but I'm normal, because it just takes a little move from there to be like, hey, I'm okay. This is okay. This is normal. This is okay. And this okayness can be like one of the biggest shifts in the game. If we really find okayness with what's here, kind of what Eli was pointing to at the very beginning, this allowing. It's just this okayness with what is. Because when there's just allowance or okayness, where's the problem? Where's the problem? Thank you, vendor. So this is a lot, right? I'm gonna shake it off a little bit here. This is going deep, and maybe who has? Let's not go like super deep on the next one, Rossi. I have a sense we should wait before we go to you. Let's go to someone else first because I know you and I know where your system goes. Is that okay?
I mean, this is very related to everything you're saying, and I am feeling very connected to self. So, but I will, if you feel your intuition is to go to somebody else,
that's all right. Just before we go there, then let's just all take it a breather because this is a lot, and it can be like this little spiritual achiever can come and there's something I need to do. I need to be able to join vendor where she was going, and all of that. We're back to this place that David was speaking of. Here we are. It's just be here now. That okayness, that Eli's allowance, even a sense of celebration, this sense of what we call like the pathless path, the sense of there's nothing that needs to be done. We are beautiful and innocent just as we are. Just needs to say that one again. It's a sense of glimpsing that nothing needs to change. That when we think of beauty, innocence, perfection, this radiant presence, that is what's already here. It's what we are, what all of our parts are made of. And in a moment, maybe you can join me in noticing noticing Rossi, maybe the blue sky behind us, behind her, that spaciousness, the sense of self. And like, what is self? What is the quality of self that we're imagining? Maybe we can even feel it. That's most prominent in Rossi's system. It's the quality of self that we notice there. And what do we imagine? What are her parts going to be? What are our two loudest parts going to be of what's coming up here? And is there anything that Rossi could say that's foreign to you that your system doesn't know, doesn't open to, isn't aware of, isn't familiar with? Is there anything she could say? Well, let's see what happens as we turn the spotlight to Rossi. So what's going on there?
Well, that was quite an intro. Yeah, I'm touched. Said, yes, for those of you, we had a session. Was it yesterday? No, on Wednesday.
No, 2 days ago.
2 days ago, yeah. And Vinder was there, and Sarah was there, and I got super triggered, super triggered. And the way it goes in my mind was that somebody else shared, like in a very, very beautiful way, like this deep, vulnerable piece around aloneness, and I just felt into it, and like there I was, really blended with that. And then we had an exchange with Sid, where a part of me really felt not very safe, and it was and then another very strong protector part like came in and was like, what is going on? This it's super strong. Oh, I'm feeling now the energy. And then also another person judged me for taking up too much space. So that's like a super deep pain for me, super, super deep pain. So I was just like, oh, it was really excruciating. I wanted to leave multiple times. I thought about like, okay, this group may not be for me. And it's so sad and disappointing because I really enjoy, like, I love the invitation around effortless IFS. Like that actually really resonates for me. So I had a conversation with Sid.
Perfect. So let me just catch everybody up here first with one other thing. Just as we hear Rossi speak about a part that did not feel safe, When we hear her speak of that part, what responds in you? Is there just a tender love for this part that doesn't feel safe, that didn't feel safe? Is there a welcoming of it? And do you notice any parts that come up Any helper parts that want to kind of help or give support. And then there's this welcoming of her part. And then how about when this part did not feel safe? Like, can you guess what happened next? Right? A protector part came up. That was a very strong protector part came up. Protect that vulnerability, just like we were doing with Vendor. The sense of the protector, the intensity of the protector matches the pain of the vulnerability. And so this intense, the strong protector came up. And as you hear that, what happens in your system as we hear about her strong protector? And it might even been like, it might even had some of that Eli energy in it. It might have had some of that anger in it. This very strong protector that was going to protect this part. As you hear that, can you just welcome that and just see the innocence and be grateful? Wow, that part that's really there serving. And then you might have some parts that might be a little scared. Maybe there's a scared part that comes in, or a shouldn't part. And just notice that. And can we welcome her part? And lastly, that there was a part that just wanted to leave, that wanted to get away from this. Can we love that in Rossi? That she had a part that, hey, I know how to alleviate this. I know how to take care of my vulnerability. I can just leave the situation. And then as we welcome all of those parts in her, this is the gift of what Rossi's been sharing with us, one of the gifts for me. Can we find this in our own systems? Can we find those three parts? The one that doesn't feel safe, the different flavors of protection that comes, and one that wants to leave. Thank you. And Rossi, how's your system doing? Because I know there's a lot that wants to be said. And how you doing?
No, it's perfect. And I really, my intention is not to take too much space today and all. Yeah, I feel the spaciousness, and I feel your welcoming, Sid, and sort of like that orientation, like this feels safe, and I'm really like, I'm very conscious of, let me say so. And I have a question, like I'd love some clarity. I feel like you touched on it, but this whole thing about the basement, okay, and like not coming closer to the basement, which, by the way, like I felt like you invited us to share what is in the basement. So I was like, wait, how does that work? Because I will just share briefly. I've been for 7 years, I've been a part of another practice called circling. And in circling, like people share very authentically. They really meet each other in the present moment. And I would, I went every day to circles with different people. And I would say to myself, like, be like, don't go there. And lo and behold, like somebody will share something vulnerably and openly. And all of a sudden, like, boom, I will find myself like in this deep vulnerability in the middle of a group that like I didn't know. And like all these things were happening. Okay.
Yes. So just that, can we all relate to this that Rossi's describing? She goes into the circling. She's like, oh, I just want to take care of myself here. I don't want to get too pulled in because it's not, self doesn't get triggered, right? Can we make that discernment of the self that does not get triggered? Can we, and like, how do you know this? Can you really know the self as being this allowance that Eli's pointing to that just doesn't get triggered? This love, this connectedness, this care, this flow. The sky that's behind Rossi. But then we have young parts, right? That get triggered, that just get triggered and just happens. And we all have those. And then just what she's describing, there's this wisdom here, this part that was like, okay, I'm not going to get too close. But then there's maybe a spiritual achiever comes when someone starts speaking about something and she's like, oh, that sounds yummy. Let's go feel that. Or some part that has her, maybe just happens automatically in her system, something just resonates like that. Like, can we all relate to this? And then maybe afterwards, the innocence of the vulnerability gets triggered and a protector comes. So there's a little bit of drama that happens inside of us. But can we all track our version of that? And can we see the okayness of it, of how it plays? And Rossi, do you have a question or kind of a final pull together of all of this that you got?
Yes. It seems to me that, Rumi is pointing out to like the no bad parts, like welcome and entertain them all. So if we really do feel that there is a basement and we're trying to sort of like maybe leave it for other times, I'm assuming that that's what you mean, like maybe connect with these parts like in a safer environment with the therapist. Like it just like it seems to me like a dichotomy. That's how it lands for me right now.
So
But I'm open to seeing
perfect.
it another way.
So what about all of us when we hear this, when we hear what Rossi's saying? Hey, wait, we're aware of the basement and Rumi's guest house. We welcome and entertain them all. And then you say, but hey, but don't go there. Don't open that door to the basement. Don't go there. Like see it from a distance and just label, maybe be aware of from a distance. What are we speaking of here? How's this playing in your system? How are you making sense of this for you? What parts are speaking in you? We heard Rossi's parts. So here's the idea from Sid's perspective, and this is just I'm just one of 9 here, and this is kind of the idea that to get back to what the theme David gave us at the very beginning, just to be here now, be, don't do. There's this sense that self, and Dick Schwartz will say that the healing in our systems come from self. Self is the source of healing. That's just classic EIFS. And so what do we need to do if self is that which heals? Most of the doing is coming from parts that want to get close to, do, make progress, go somewhere. What we're playing with here in effortless EIFS is the sense of the healing that's just our intrinsic nature, the welcoming, this allowance of Eli's. And then this is the paradox that, and to see if you can relate to this. Often when there is a doing, when we're like, we want to, oh, let me just see if I can step down one step into the basement, right? And if there's a doing, if there's an agenda, if there's a wanting, there's coming from a part, right? And when we have that part, other parts can hear a should, something should be different. And what happens when you receive a should, right? What automatically comes up? There's a sense of a polarity, a resistance will come if there's a should. Oh, things would be better if that part was healed, if that part was different. All right. If we come with that, there's usually an equal and opposite reaction. And this is why this, in my perspective, the healing process takes so darn long, because we get caught in all these polarities, and it's like we're driving with the emergency brake on. Okay. All right, I'd like to open that up and see if there's anything that's coming up in response to Rossi. Maybe if we can hear from at least something short from at least 2 people in response to that. What do we have?
For me, the basement, the paradox for me was kind of because it was resolved, I guess, because when it was ready to be faced, it was faced. I mean, it's not something I avoided it until it exploded, and then it was like, oh, you're here now, so now I'll deal with you. And I really didn't even know it was there until it raised its head and said, or something, I don't know, it was just the process takes care of itself, and to me that kind of takes care of the paradox for me. So
Thank you, Mary. Can we all relate to that? And sometimes it's just, hey, the parts come up when they come up, and maybe that's part of the organicness of the system, right? When something is, when there's an openness to it, because otherwise it starts to come up, you're not even aware of it, because parts will push it down, right? Protectors will push it down until the system's ready, until something can be open to it. Okay. One other comment on all of this before we kind of see where it goes next? Here comes David.
Maybe it's my Christian background coming up, because I am that, but I'm a number of other things as well as being a Christian. But these phrases like "thy will be done" or "have faith in God" is very similar, or it's identical actually to not doing anything, just trusting in the process. And that, as Mary was just saying, that when it's there, when it's visible, hey, it's visible. Wow, look at that. Be with that, and it's on, stuff either is resolved or not resolved in its own time.
Thank you. So what's our version of that? Thy will be done. Have faith in God. Thy will be done. Maybe for some of us, it's like that. Gosh, that said it so well from the kind of a religious perspective, theological perspective. But what's your version of it? Thy will be done. It's more like just what Mary said. It just kind of happens when it happens. There's a trust. Wow.
I just add a
So
phrase
rich.
that's been very comforting for me. I will that thy will be my will. And that just sort of encapsulates it all for me. So,
Wow. I will that thy will be my will. And Mary, while you're going, especially because we haven't seen you forever, would you like to share next what's happening? But let me just, before you do, because we're going to leave Eli and Rossi in just, we're going to lose them in like 8 minutes. Any final words, Eli? Rossi, any final words?
Appreciation, and I'll still sit with it because it seems like there are some pieces, at least to my experience, but I imagine to others, that they continuously unfold. And I've heard other teachers speak about like, what, like actually an acceptance of like, what if this is always there? Like, and that's, I find that to be a challenging inquiry, but yeah. Thank you all.
Oh, thank you. Mary, tell us what's going. What's the edge? What's the most interesting edge in Mary world?
for one, the realization that all of these parts that each individually we've all been, it's not mean to speak for everybody, but the parts that we've always hidden and been most afraid of or embarrassed or whatever, they're part and parcel of being, it's like it's a program of being human. It's like it's part of the programming of the computer of being a human to have all this stuff that we think we're not supposed to have. And then the game, for not to be flippant about it, but the game is to then go, oh, wait, this is the game. And this is supposed to be here. And learning to be with it, love it, live it, allow it is just part of the game. And um, it's once you kind of, I don't know, it's then you kind of get to cheer what's happening for me of late. And I don't know, I'm kind of rambling, but it's it's like I'm cheering my character on. I mean, it's like, damn girl, you did good. I mean, and look what you overcame, and you dealt with this, and yeah, you've still got this, but yeah, it'll reveal itself, blah blah blah. So it's just kind of seeing us, like I'm a character. This is my new analogy. I am the main character in my novel, and all of y'all are in my novel today, but you're not the main character. I get to be the star of my show and all of her story. And then I can kind of, so anyway, that's kind of what's happening. That's enough.
Wow. Okay, so where are we all going with that? How's that? First off, what's the response inside of you to what Mary shared? How's it being met? Is there an intimacy, a connectedness, a welcoming? Is there an awe? Like what's the flavor of the way beingness responds? Is it awe? Is it connectedness? Is it Eli's allowance? Is it love? Peace? What's it met by? And then what parts come up in response to Mary's? It's like, whoa, is this like a comparison? Like, wow, that's really cool. I don't know if sometimes I can do that, sometimes I can't. What parts come up? I think Susan might have a part like that. It's like this one that's just like, what parts come up in response? As she says, the sense of cheering my character on. How do we make sense of that when we hear Mary say that? Cheering my character on. So who's cheering the character on? Who's cheering the character on? And what's the character as we hear that? Is the character this everything that's kind of personal here. This collection, I think, the collection of these aspects of the personal, of what we call parts, all of these expressions of us that perhaps some people call living in time, these aspects of the character. Cheering it on. Who's cheering it on? Is that Eli's allowance? It's just a welcoming, and then it can, as it bubbles, it can, like, could it really be? Could that allowance really be a cheering? Because we often use welcoming. Could it be cheering? That the very nature of this yes, of this beingness, is cheering on the character. And Mary describes, hey, you guys are in my show, but I'm the star. This character is the star of the show, right? This is the one that's really being cheered on, all these parts of my system. And she even calls it a game. It just feels like this is what the game is. Like the game shifts from the sense of, oh, I should be embarrassed about these parts. This human programming. There's something embarrassing. Something should be different. We all know this one, right? As we look at our system, we have the part that says something should be different. It'd be better if it would be different. Even that. Then Mary goes to this game of love it, live it, allow it. This
Well, and
game,
that's the beauty of these calls, is the universality of all these things. That's what it's like, from a clarity of just going, oh, this is just how it works. I mean, and it makes it all okay and normalizes it, to use Vender's term. I mean, I loved that one. It's all okay. It's all normal. So, I mean, anyway, yeah.
keep
And then there's a
doing
little
that,
bit of
Mary.
judgment part, who's trying to be good and not say the wrong thing or all that. So there's always that little part that comes in. So I've got my own parts, but yeah.
So how about that? Can we sense Mary's she's been doing lots of, you guys are going to know her as one of these people on YouTube who are speaking about this. And this is where she's like living deeply in this these days. And can we appreciate, is there a sense of cheering on what she's sharing? It's like, wow, her system seems to have shifted, opened, right, to this sense of more self-leadership, where the self-leadership has become, and there's a sense of abiding there, like a center of gravity. Dick Schwartz says it's only a sense of the center of gravity shifting. That's all when he tries to translate this Eastern concept of awakening and self-realization. He says the only thing that happens is the center of gravity shifts. And can we feel the center of gravity that Mary's speaking of and speaking from, where it's just a cheering on the parts, and this being, this self that just welcomes and cheers them on. And I love her, like, you just love it, you live it, you allow it. Cheering on of this character of Mary. How are we doing? Let me just see if anything's bubbling up that comes up for anybody around what Mary said, just to throw out if there are any questions for her to be more clear about something. How are we doing? Anything up? Then, Mary, how would you like to bring this together for all of us, especially with that normalizing? I love what you said about the normalizing of it. Give us a little bit more. Tie it together. Put the wrap on it. Bye, Eli.
Bye, Eli. And it's, oh, and Rossi, bye.
Bye, Rossi.
I guess it's like you get the bird's eye view, and then it just again, this the resonance of connection through these foibles that are then just loved. And I'm just that's what happened on this call. It was like, oh, it's just this, it's all normal, as Vender said, and it's resonance through our own perceived faults and flaws that are it's just loving everybody with all our stuff. So yeah.
Loving everyone with all their stuff. Sorry.
And another little analogy that I like is thinking of, like, if you're at TJ Maxx and their dressing room doors swing, and it's like the hinge of that door that can swing out or in. And if it goes out, it's out in the world. It can be personal. It can be the beingness out in the world. But when it swings in, it's more home here. I don't know. I've played with that little hinge idea of the I. And is the I identifying as the personal self, or is it identifying as being? And they're both, it just gets to swing. So I'm a swinger.
Love that. She's a swinger, right? Is that just another, it's like I was using Eli's reclining chair back and forth, but I like this one, the swinging, the door out, going out or in. Wow. So how's that for all of us? How are we doing? Thank you so much, Mary. I thank you so much. And I also noticed time-wise, and we'll go right to David, that we've got like 30 minutes left, and we haven't really heard from David, Jack, Susan, and Sarah as far as what's going on in their system. Let's rock and roll. But before we go, just a little shake, a little shake. That was a lot going with Mary into that swingers with Mary. And then here we are. Just notice what's here. Notice what the parts that are here, thoughts, feelings, sensations, and what's it arising, and what's the background, what's the beingness, what's the flavor of that. And put on your seatbelt, because here we go. David.
Okay, two things that are really kind of cool today that I'm enjoying. So having mentioned a Christian background, I just also, this other phrase popped up. There's a spiritual tradition that really centers around the phrase, I am that. I am that. And that like popped up every time anybody talks about, yeah, I know that. I am that. What an incredible thing to, okay, so that was just like really a great feeling of, well, of connectedness, of love, of gratitude. Thing number two, this is a person who has made a place in the world based on thinking and being smart and analyzing and maybe debating or etc. And I encountered something quite a little bit different than I'd ever seen before, that even as I am speaking now, I see a part that is trying to be helpful, that's trying to be supportive, that wants to spread the joy, the wonder, the fun that I'm having to people. And at the same time, there's a part that's questioning. It says, yeah, but was your motivation, why, motivation? And the motivation suspect? Is it like, because I want to get approval? It's because I want to be respectable, because I want people to love me. And that's not respectable. Oh, really? It's human, like Mary says. It's just playing. It's just a game that's being played. So these two parts, and it's like this person loves paradox because it's not always, but more recently in my life, paradox. It's fun because even though I'm a really smart person and I've made my life based on that, what paradox means is I can't figure it out. It's not going to be resolved by this whole thinking process. And I just love that. It's fun. It's fun playing with that.
Wow. And how do you do with, for all of us, what David's pointing to with this paradox, that the mind can't figure out? How are you with that? Is it excruciating? We were here seeing Rossi address that. She was kind of playing with that space of, I can't reconcile it. And she was in that discomfort. What's it like for you to be in that discomfort of the paradox? The mind can't figure it out. And then for some of us, we play with the Zen. This can be the entire path. They call it a koan. And this is like what the mind can't reconcile as a way of the self-realization. How are you with that? And then just quickly, how did you deal with David saying the I am that, what was going on for him as we each shared a part, as we shared a quality in his system? It was just, I am that. And what does that mean to you? What's your flavor of that? What is I am that? What does it mean? I'm connected with it, that I'm closer than intimacy. I'm beyond intimacy with it. I'm inseparable from it. What's your word? That I am that, as we were tracking what David was describing What's your how do you experience that as you hear David speaking, as you hear me speaking, and you hear my parts and David's parts? And then David's curiosity about, he finds a joy in, like, just what we're doing right now. We're connecting, we're playing, we're celebrating each other for all of us. And then there's a part that comes up in him. It's like, oh, but wait a minute. I want to be careful here. What's my motivation? Why am I doing this? Am I getting something from this? Am I getting an approval, respectfulness? Am I getting and wanting people to love me? And I'd like to invite us all to see if we can find all of that, to find parts that are wanting approval. I can find every one of these parts that's wanting approval, parts that are wanting to be respected. Can we see the innocence of these sweet parts of us that are looking for okayness, right? They've got some kind of burden they're carrying, some kind of vulnerability, looking for okay, and they can find a taste of that through the sense of being respected. And can we find, because I want people to love me. Whoa, that's very vulnerable. Don't get too close to that, but there's gonna be a part that wants people to love you. Like, can you find that? And lastly, because I'm just watching the time, can all of that be okay? Just like Mary's saying, normal. Can we even cheer it on? Can we even cheer it on, these parts? Wow, this part that wants to be loved, that wants to be accepted, that wants to be respected. Final thoughts, David.
Yeah, something else came up too. The swinging door thing, Mary. It reminded me of I think it's Nisargadatta, who said, "When I look inside, I see that I am nothing," and that's wisdom. And when I look outside, I see that the door's just swinging here. When I look outside, I see that I am everything. That is love.
Yeah.
Swinging. I love that. I get comfortable with the rhythm of it establishing itself by itself on its own.
Thank you, David. Okay, a little breather. Woo! Because we've got more adventure ahead of us. We've got 21 minutes left for adventure, because we've got Sarah, Susan, and Jack. Who wants to go next? Who wants to go next? Sarah!
Yeah, it was great today. Something that Mary said about the main character thing, it brought up for me some things, and it was really nice. It brought up for me a movie that I watched recently. It's an old movie called The Truman Show. I don't know if anyone watched that. Yeah, it's old and I never watched it, and then someone mentioned it the other day, so I went and watched it, and it was really interesting to see like how in the Truman Show, the man called Truman, he's the main character of a show and he doesn't even know, and everyone else is on it. Everyone who lives around him, the neighbors, even his wife, everyone knows that he's just a character in a show, but he doesn't know. And even though that he doesn't know, his sense of self made his choices. He had free will after all, and he fell in love with a woman who wasn't his wife and who wasn't orchestrated as in the show. So he kind of beat the show. Even though he was just a character, his sense of self beat the script of the show, and he had his own identity, and he just honored himself. And I really love that, how he honored himself, and he broke free from the roles that were given to him. And I kind of like went deep in there, like, oh, it's like the conditioning, like the cultural conditioning, the culture, the family, the organization, the company, whatever roles that we've been conditioned to have. Like, we can just, like, if we truly listen to ourselves and honor our wishes, we can just break out of anything and just follow our true desires, our true self. our self desires. And yeah, it brought up that when Mary mentioned the cheering the main character energy, and I listened to what parts of me were cheering me on, you know, cheering myself and my desires, and I listened to some of them, and I was just so compassionate and just so happy and grateful, and it brought up a lot of emotions for me, knowing that, oh, I have parts that really want my authentic self to just thrive, and it's just beautiful, and we all have these parts, and all of our parts really, that's what they all want for us, even the ones that want to protect, even the exiles, you know, once they're unburdened, they become their true selves, you know, they become their real, you know, self before they were exiled, and they can step up for their roles, and then you become this new person, this new human being, and it's just this beautiful expression of self, and it just brought up a lot of feelings for me, and it brought up a lot in my system. So thank you for that, Mary. And yeah, I feel like this is what I want to share for today. When I came, I had parts that were dominant. I had a binge part, the one that wants to play, and it takes like hours in play and just loses time in playing. And then I would feel guilty about playing, about binging. And then there's a part that makes me want to feel that it's okay, you can enjoy the time that you spend playing. So I came with these parts, you know, the part that wants to play, and the parts that's ashamed of too much play, and the part that feels it's okay to play. And then of course there's self that's okay with all of these parts. So these are the original parts that I came with.
Nice. Let me ask everybody about this. Because I think there's the two parts to Sarah's sharing. The first part of her sharing about the Truman Show, about the cultural expectations of us, the people, the environment, the sense of the shoulds. And then there's the cheering on for the main character, for the authenticity, for even the exiles become the true self, the cheering on. And are we able to be the heroes? It's like Truman was able to escape those weights. What's that tension like in our system? And then in a way, she's even describing that tension right now, one expression of it in the second part of her sharing. The sense of there's this aspect of me that just wants to play. It just wants to play. It just wants to go fully into play. And so what is that for you? When we hear Sarah's word play, you can replace it. It might be creativity. It might be, for David, it might be intellectual exploration. It might be dancing. It might be writing. It might be going for a drive, being in nature. It might be speaking honestly, this authentic relating that Rossi was speaking of. What is that drive? As we can feel this drive in Sarah to play, like in play. The play, can you feel it? Like in play, you can't have a lot of contractions in the midst of play. It's like you can't have a lot of shoulds and be playing at the same time. Like there's something releasing freedom in this play that Sarah's pointing to. And almost you can feel the tension, like we were talking about the cultural expectations. Because then we hear that in her system. We hear the should, the shame. Wait a minute. No, you shouldn't do that. We can feel the shame that's there in it, part that's shameful, another part that's saying, yes, you should let it go, be authentic, let it express. And then she describes self that just is okay with and welcomes it all. I wish we had an hour to see how each of us experienced what Sarah just said. But let's just take 30 seconds just to see how we feel that tension inside of us. This yearning for freedom, for expression, for play, for authenticity, and that which restricts it within us. Attention. Thank you so much, Sarah. Susan, Jack, who wants to go next? Here comes Jack.
Yeah, the part, the self energy, I guess, or quality of self, is a sense of just doing what I'm doing. And if you want to know what that feels like, try not doing what you're doing for a while. Yeah. So this idea of no problem to solve, I'm a big fan of that state. And what came to me was, okay, so where does that go when there is a problem to solve, and if anywhere? It doesn't really go anywhere just because there's a problem to solve for me. So it does help me sort of set that, no problem to solve is pretty peaceful, but just because when the problem becomes an opportunity for me is what usually happens. There's a way that pops out at me, but yeah, and the way the parts are showing up for me is in a back pain. And I don't know, I'm not really in touch with the exhale. I'm not really in touch with the protector on that whole thing. And it feels like there's some stuff to do maybe. But so I feel like it's tough to be in touch with two parts that are almost playing hide and seek.
What responds to the back pain? As you notice the back pain, like how are you? How is your system with the back pain? What parts do you hear? Oh, this wise one's like, oh, we're okay. We can just be with the pain. And another one's like, God, I hate this pain. It's bad. When's it going to relieve? What can I do to make it better? What do you find?
Well, the part that I mentioned before, that sort of a deep, amoral, evil part that's just sort of there. It's just, yeah. That's sort of what it feels like I might be trying to protect myself from.
Okay, so
Which
so
is
how about
strange
that?
because that can become a protector for other parts sometimes. It's very, very strange. It's like they switch roles or something. I don't know
Okay, so
if it's that working for me or not. But
I don't think we should jump over this one, this deep immoral evil part. Just as we all hear this deep immoral evil part. Like, in IFS, there's this idea there are no bad parts. Every part is doing its just very best to serve the system. And like when we hear this in Jack, can we find that in this part that's labeled a deep amoral evil part? Can we really, this is a big deal. Can we touch the innocence of it? And he might be able to justify, no, it is this, but can we find the innocence in this part? Can it be welcomed into our communal guest house? Can Jack's amoral evil part be welcomed here? And just like Rossi did, I loved it when she said, I'm not going there. Can we also welcome the wisdom of our system that's like, oh, that's too much for my system right now. But just see if we can welcome that. And Jack, how about you? How are you with this idea of this deep amoral evil part?
well, if I do welcome it, it needs supervision. Right? I can't really blend with it. I got to really watch it.
Yeah.
It's not something that, yeah.
And is that all right?
It's like I need supervisors for this part. It's like, yeah, that's completely all right. That's kind of what happens. Yeah.
And hey, this part, you stay in your side of the basement, your corner of the basement. You just stay there. We'll come down. We'll hear you, see you, but you just stay right there.
Well, it's not really staying in the corner of the basement. It wants to be seen, and I think it's what's creating this pain in my back. So.
Okay, so how about that for all of us when we hear that the part wants to be seen, that this part of Jack's wants to be seen? Does it touch our heart that it wants to be seen, wants to be heard? And we all relate to that. And maybe we all probably have versions of whatever we consider our kind of the deepest amoral, evil part, whatever your version of it. You might have very different words for it. You might have the same ones. But beneath it, how about that? That Jack says he just wants to be seen. And Jack, how does your system respond to that? Do we have some concern parts that come up? It's like, oh, we got to be really careful here.
Yeah, no, yeah. I'm responsible. I'll be careful. You know, like you said at the beginning, you have to be responsible for your own journey, and I'm happy to be responsible for it. But I don't think. I think as long as I'm, you know, as supervised, I can.
Okay, then
The
let me
crazy
ask you.
things that it may want is like.
Yeah, so it might want some crazy things that are just like, oh my God, that's horrible. Never, you know, it might whatever. But at the same time, let me ask you this: is it welcomed here? Is it welcomed from this self, from this awareness? Is that welcome it just as much as it welcomes the playful part of Sarah's?
Oh yeah. It's welcomed, but it needs a supervisor too. I mean, you can welcome things. Okay, yeah, you're welcome here, but you know,
it's beautiful. And okay, so one more question then. As we know, first for all of us, it's beautiful, right? That it's being welcomed in Jack's system, that it's really welcomed here. That can seem so scary. And so just notice, how does that play in your system? And then having the both at the same time, the sense of welcoming that Jack's describing, there's just the beingness is welcoming. And then also, hey, we're not going to be stupid here. We've got parts that are going to be careful, care for it, make sure it doesn't disrupt, and make sure it doesn't blend and we do something that we'll regret forever. Any final thoughts, Jack?
Yeah, I'm really thinking it might want a different job. You know, like it's like it may want to be doing something else, but that gets more into like just classic IFS, I think. So it's definitely welcome to try to. Yeah, the part. Yeah, the part like could go off one of these. Oh, it seemed like a good idea at the time. When the other parts go, yeah, right. It seems like a good idea. Sure, and that's not a good idea. Also, so I don't know. There's an energy there though. Wow, that I just can't. It's a really powerful energy, and it's like a very powerful. It's a defensive energy. It's like the opposite of a passive aggressive. It's like a real aggressive sort of like. Yeah.
In that for all of us, aren't we curious with our systems, as Jack describes this part, that hey, maybe I think it wants a different role? As we hear this defensive energy, there's something in us, just like this curiosity. It's like, what does it really want? What is it that it really longs for, this part? What does it want? What role would suit it better? And I want to suggest we're gonna kind of transition from here, but just that can be so much for your parts. Like, can you feel it in your system when you have a part that's upset and angry? Just the sense of, what does it really want? The sense of this beyond welcoming. It's a welcoming, and there's just a curiosity and love. What does it really want? Thank you, Jack. We've just got a few minutes left, and we want to have every single minute of it with Susan's system, because we don't want to miss the gift that's here for us.
Well, I might disappoint. I haven't got a load to say. I feel I always enjoy sitting in these groups and really getting a chance just to stop and be in sort of self energy, which is helped by everybody. So I feel kind of, for once, I'm usually quite talkative, but I don't feel that. But so it's nice to see the humanity and the normalizing that everyone's spoken about. It's always nice. But what my system has really responded to today is Mary's check-in, because it really touched something in me that is coming to the point where it's fun watching the humanity, the character, as Mary put it, and sort of with its perfect imperfections, really. It's kind of, that's where I think I'm letting go of the need for perfecting the parts or the character, and sort of seeing the beauty in that anyway, which sort of makes it perfect. So that, yeah, so kind of wanting to be more in self, but from self one sort of sees the parts as okay, you know, they're doing okay. And that doesn't mean things won't be unburdened, or that can happen, but there's no great need for it, really. So really playful kind of parts came up around Mary's check-in that just felt like, oh, we could play here. So this is fun. And others, but yeah. And I also like Vinda, something that was coming up for me when I was checking in at the very beginning with Eli was I sort of felt there was something very feminine in there's like this letting go, giving back burdens and legacy, but all that sort of stuff. But also at the same time, there was this compassion for the ancestors. And I'm saying it's sort of a feminine quality rather than a woman's, but I know Vinda said about, is it being a woman where we go and rescue people and all of that. So I think there was something that came up that just, I thought, oh, is this because, you know, there's a lot of feminine energy in me that I'm worried, not worried about giving back, but have compassion for that, but who's taking that, all the whole story of the ancestry and everything. And I'm not, anyway, that's, so when Vinda said, I think she mentioned it, you know, being a rescuer can come with being a woman. There was something about the feminine and something about that I just think is
Quick question, Susan. Can the system discern this love and care for others? This just, maybe it's overflowing. Maybe we call it feminine. All this love and care that's there, that expression, and then the love and care when it has a should, when it has a charge, a burden, connected to it.
Yeah, there's a difference. Yeah.
Yeah.
It feels the compassion I felt like coming from sort of self, and today, I'm not saying always, I can go into a definite rescuing part, but more and more, that's part of what I'm going, where I'm more and more resting in self and there for others, or compassionate, but there's no, perhaps I see less need to fix things, in myself and in others.
And how about when it does come up, just in the playfulness of this all, when a rescuer does, like, well, this is my responsibility, I need to do this. Can that be okay and just accepted in this grand playful dance?
Yeah, I guess at the moment there are parts that are really, I think I brought this up before, that are really wanting the self energy, you know, that are really saying, don't get in the way. I want to bathe in self energy. I just want to sit in that. And whether that, there might be some wisdom in that, I don't know. But there are definitely parts that are just trying to clear the path. Perhaps, and for me to really get familiar with that, I don't know, to really, so I can live more from. So I don't know whether that's, you know, judging part, or whether there's a wisdom in that. I don't know.
So concurrently with those parts that are like better if there's more self-abidance, concurrent with that, can you also touch that perfect imperfections?
Yeah. Yes, I can see that. Yeah, but there's parts of me at the moment that just want to keep it very simple, and so
can we, this for all of us, as we talk about the center of gravity moving, if we can just kind of feel the awe and the beauty of Susan's system, and where, if we can just sense where it is, that there's this perfect imperfections, but then at the same time there are these parts that are like, wait, there's kind of more to do here. There's more we need to kind of get the space a little bit more clear, more self-abidance. And can that just be loved? Because you might have a spiritual achiever that shows up and says, no, we shouldn't have that here. We should just be all the perfection of the imperfections, just the stance of Leela. But that's just a part. The game seems to be like what you guys were saying earlier about the character, about the just enjoying, celebrating cheering on this character just the way it is, these expressions of it. Final words for us, Susan, as we close.
Well, I think you kind of turned it around. Yes, I celebrate. I feel that the parts that want more self are actually, there's some wisdom in it. That's, I mean, I said that. I think that's what it. I think it's just like
Yes.
get familiar, learn to abide, and then maybe that swing door or the chair, both were very helpful. But actually, the swing door was like both are equally okay. But at the moment, it feels like I've done a lot of
Yes.
the in the world, and I need to come back more to self to balance, and
Yes.
then both will be fine. There's something about that anyway.
This is there's a lot here in this final thing Susan's saying, right? If we can just know where that goes for you, where that goes, how that plays for you, your version of what Susan just said and what we've been exploring all day. And gosh, it feels horrible. It's almost like we're ending with just what David was pointing to, the sense of the paradox, the koan, it's uncomfortable for me. I notice the discomfort of it. And I think we should end in with that paradox with this. Wow. And it's really uncomfortable here. And at the same time, it really is. And I just want to, and Mary, can you hold on a minute with me afterwards? And everybody, wow. Again, how we co-created this just in our authentic sharing. How beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much. Come back again and again and again. I hope to see you soon. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
all. Thank you.
Mary, I love what you shared. Wow.
Well, I felt kind of
cheering.
it wasn't on script, but it was just what was coming out. So I just rolled with it.
Oh. She gave us you brought in so much. The character of Mary, the star, the cheering, the sense of self, not just welcoming or acceptance, but it's like it's cheering.
Well, yeah, I did. It was after my session with Emerson. I think it was the second between the two sessions that I did with him. And it's, of course, the story of the character is still ongoing because I'm still here. But I did get this sense of a almost complete story arc of, and because like I've read the holographic universe a few times and I love it, but it's a little too abstract for me. And this analogy of we're all in our the stars of our own novels, and yet we're in each other's novels. That was like, oh, and I can see the hero's journey, right? But it's my hero who's having her journey instead of this generic. It was me. It was like I suddenly became the hero of my own journey, and so then there was some grief that was like, oh, her it's kind of the end of the line for the character in some way. And that's just, plays of ups and downs of it. But yeah, it was really helpful. And that's what's starting to come is when I've been in the process and now I'm sort of coming to completion of much of it. So I get a bird's eye view to kind of see the whole, how it all works, how the puzzles fit together. And so that's kind of what's going on. And so, yeah.
Mm. Let me get my note from what you shared. This, the game, love it, live it, allow it. Oh,
That
oh.
I didn't plan on that. That just came out. Yeah.